Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome here. This is your host, Muawiyah Taka, and we're going to continue on our series, Prophetic Chronicles, where we discuss the lives of the prophets from Adam alayhi salam to Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, where we analyze their da'wah, their mission, what was their purpose, why were they sent to their people, and how they tried to encourage them to return back to al-Islam. We covered very briefly 3 prophets that were amongst their people, which was Adam, Sheeth and Idris, and they were amongst the people before idolatry came into the Ummah. We briefly touched upon where idolatry came from, how idolatry came, and who was the one behind calling people to the shirk, to the worship of others besides Allah, which was Iblis. And then we discussed 3 prophets that were sent after that: Nuh, Hud, and Salih. Nuh was the first one, where the people were destroyed by water. Hud was the second one, when the people were destroyed by an earthquake, or by wind, And Salih was sent to his people, where they were destroyed by an earthquake and a loud sound. All those people were in the areas, as I mentioned. Thumud was in the southern area of what's known in the Khalij, and we had Salih in what's known as Madat Salih, near the Tabuk area, north of Saudi Arabia. And then we got to discuss intricate details of Ibrahim, and that was an amazing story. Ibrahim engaging with his people, calling them to Islam and to the oneness of Allah, using logic and good arguments. We discussed the argument he gave about the sun, the stars, the moon and the sun, showing them through the transition of that argument the fallacy of worshipping celestial bodies. And also he gave an example of how he destroyed their idols, left the big one, and used that as evidence against them. And then finally we covered the discussion that he had, the argument he had with Nimrod, where he showed Nimrod the evil of his ways by demonstrating that Allah caused the sun to rise and set in a certain location. Do something different if you can, and he wasn't able to do so. This is what we've covered so far. So after the incident with Nimrod, Ibrahim decided to make the hijrah. And this is a very important part of al-Islam itself. A Muslim, if they are unable to fulfill their rights towards Allah and able to practice their Islam, then as Allah has mentioned in the Quran, the earth is wide. You can make hijrah and go wherever you need to go. So that's exactly what Ibrahim did. So he left his people and made a migration. Him, his wife, even Lot went to live in what's known today as Palestine. And Allah has mentioned specifically the blessings that have been attached to Palestine and the surrounding area. It's where Ibrahim established himself, where his family later, as we've learned, grew, and essentially the progeny of Ibrahim existed and propagated during that time after the migration to Palestine. It's a very special place that Ibrahim established, built on. And as we want to cover more about this information, we're going to see how exactly what happened when he left Palestine and went to Egypt. So before that, it was mentioned that he traveled south towards Yemen with his wife. But there was a famine there, so he redirected himself towards Egypt. And when he got to Egypt, he found a person there, or there was an individual there, who was described as being Jabbar, as being haughty and arrogant and oppressive. Someone who takes control of other people's lives and whatnot. And what was specific about this individual is that he himself used to find other people who, if he had any women with him and he liked them, he would just take her. As an example of an oppressor, if he has the power to do so, he exerted his power and did so. So when Ibrahim went to Egypt, and this person found out about Sarah, he discovered that, or he wanted to find out, who is this person to Ibrahim? Who is this person? Because if it's her husband, maybe he might kill him, maybe he might get rid of him, so I can take her for himself. So when he was asked, who is this person, who is this individual? Ibrahim mentioned, she is my sister. Now this particular incident here is a narration which mentioned that Ibrahim didn't lie except in 3 incidences. We covered 2 of those incidences. One when the people, idolaters, asked Ibrahim to come out for their Eid, and he said to them, I am sick. This was part of his plot to destroy the idols. But he wasn't sick. The second incident is when he said, the big one, ask him if he speaks. So we have two incidences where Ibrahim told something that wasn't true, but there was a purpose, there's a reason for that. And that was to educate the people, or educate his people. Then we have a third incident, which is this one here, where Ibrahim feared for his life, feared for the life of his wife. If he was to say that his wife, maybe he'll be killed and should be taken, or something like that. What should he do? So therefore he said to him, this is my sister. And due to that, Ibrahim was saved. You could say he wasn't killed, or wasn't harmed. And therefore, this individual tried to take Sarah for himself. But what was mentioned is that Ibrahim said to Sarah, this is what I've done. I've told this person that you're my sister. Please don't expose me. Please don't share my secrets that I lied. Inshallah, Allah will protect us. This is what he told Sarah, and she, as a dutiful wife, she kept the secret. So after Sarah came to know of what has happened, and this oppressive individual called her to his private court or something like that, he was brought forward, and Ibrahim was obviously making dua, making lots of dua that Allah protects her and saves her. So as she was brought forward and the doors were closed behind her, this individual, this oppressive man who wants to force himself onto some woman who is not willing, came forward to her in order to reach his hand forward to take what he wants from her. But before that happened, his hand was afflicted with paralysis. His hand was afflicted with paralysis, and he was unable to move himself. And he asked her, what's happening? He asked her, what's happening? And it became known to him that Allah is the one who prevented him. Or not necessarily Allah, but to him, maybe he thought something has stopped him. Whatever the case may be. But he understood that he was unable to go near her because something had stopped him. We know it was Allah who prevented him, but who knows what he thought. But he asked her, release me, allow me to move again, allow me to have control over my body again, and I won't touch you. He made a promise. And as we know with people, just like Iblis made a promise, those people are sinners and evil people, they always make promises, and promises mean nothing to them. They'll break it at any time. So she made dua to Allah to release him, and he was released. But as soon as he was released, he tried again. He reached forward his hand once again in order to try and harm her once again. And just like what happened the first time, again he was afflicted with paralysis. He was afflicted with something that prevented him from moving. He was paralyzed. And once again, he asked her, please release me. Now, interestingly enough, he never said, ask Allah to release me. He just said, please release me. So who knows what he thought, but he asked to be released once again. And then Sarah made dua again for him to be released, because he did promise again, he won't do it. He won't go near her again. But like the shaitan he is, like the evil person he was, the moment he's released, he tried a third time. And again, a third time, he was afflicted with the same thing. So at this point, it became clear to him, he's not going to get what he wants. He's not going to get what he wants. So this was the last time he tried. He asked to be released. She made dua for him to be released, and that was it. He was released, and he said to the person who brought her forward, because this person, I don't know whether it's his servant or his confidant, he said to him, take this woman away from me. You brought me a shaitan. You brought me some kind of demon. So he thought that she was one who was afflicting him, not realizing that it was Allah who was the one who was protecting her from him. So after Sarah was freed from this oppressive individual, as you can imagine, he just experienced some kind of amazing experience. He was prevented physically from harming someone. So obviously he associated that of her being some kind of demon or something, maybe a witch or something like that. So you could say as a means to almost appease her, you could say, or ask her not to do it again, you could say, he gave her, Sarah, Hajar. So Hajar was a gift from him to her, I guess you could say, to kind of make sure it doesn't happen to him again or something like that. And as a result, Ibrahim and Sarah, they were gifted many gifts. So actually, when Ibrahim returned from Egypt, he actually had a lot of wealth. He went there, just him and his wife, and ended up coming with Hajar, a maid that was given to Sarah, and lots of cattle and wealth and so on and so forth. So when he actually returned back to Palestine, ironically, he returned back rich and wealthy. And that's an interesting side effect of that. As a result of the dua to protect her, he was gifted a lot of things. And that's an interesting thing for us to remember in Islam, in life even. Sometimes what we perceive to be a tragedy or something harmful comes towards us, maybe there's actually an avenue for us to get blessing, for Allah to give to us rizq and provision. It's possible that the job you lost, that you were working there for over a decade, that you really was attached to that job, you felt that job was your means to pay your bills and whatnot. Maybe losing that job was a means for you to actually get a better job. That if you hadn't lost that job, you would have actually stayed in a lower paying wage or in a worse environment than before. It's possible that sometimes something tragic could be a blessing for you. So as Ibrahim returned back to Palestine, it was said they had hundreds of sheep and cattle and so on and so forth they had with him as well. And when he returned back rich, it was said, and Allah knows best, that Lut alayhi salam also was given by Ibrahim some of his wealth. So you can see here again Ibrahim sharing his wealth, sharing the blessings Allah has given him with his family. Not just his family, but his family in al-Islam. Like I said before, Ibrahim distanced himself from the people of Shirk and disassociated himself even from being from those people. So no doubt those who are upon the same religion as him, worshipping the same God as him, then they are definitely from his family. And that's exactly what he did. He looked after his family, sharing the wealth that he has with them and giving them some sustenance, allowing them to worship Allah without any difficulties or any hardship in his life. Because definitely having hardship will prevent or make it difficult for you to worship Allah. And whilst in Palestine, it was said that Allah showed Ibrahim the east and the west and promised Ibrahim that this east and the west will be for you and your progeny. That your generations that come after you, they will inherit the east and the west, and that's exactly what we've seen throughout history. So Ibrahim has returned back to Palestine. He has lots of wealth and he's ready now to take on the world and cultivate his family. However, Ibrahim still doesn't have any children. And by this time now, Sarah is now getting older. She's in her 80s and she definitely can't have any more children. So Ibrahim was wondering, how can I get a child? He makes dua to Allah because Allah can do all things. And we've already witnessed 3 miracles given to Ibrahim. One was where he was thrown into the fire and it didn't harm him. 2 was when the bird was able to come back alive. And now we need a 3rd one, which is now that he's given a child. However, Sarah, looking at the situation, she gave Hajar as a wife to Ibrahim. So even if she can't have a child, maybe with Hajar he can have a child. And that's exactly what happened. Ibrahim married Hajar and he had Ismail. So Ismail was born to Ibrahim, and obviously Ibrahim was very happy. His firstborn child, his only child that he had. However, Allah had a test for him. Allah instructed him to place Ismail in a special place for a purpose that will be made clear later on. Centuries later on, you could say even. So Ibrahim told Hajar, let's go, take Ismail with you, we're going on the journey. So Ibrahim went with Hajar, and it was said that she was asking him what's going on and he refused to answer. And eventually when he got to the place in Mecca and he placed Hajar in Mecca, she was asking, why am I being placed there? And Ibrahim said, nothing. And then she asked him the important question, has Allah ordered you to do this? And he said, yes. And she said the very famous words, in that case, Allah will not let us go to waste. if you're placing us here, a place where there's no shrubs, no water, no nothing, by the instruction of Allah, then no doubt Allah has a plan and we submit to that plan. So here we have another example of a believer. Hajar was obviously a believer. She believed in Allah, she submitted to Allah, and she submitted to the will of Allah. And then Ibrahim left. Now she did her best to feed Ismail, but obviously there comes a point when food is finished and she can't breastfeed him any further. And it was mentioned that he was even convulsing because he had no food and run out of milk. So she was running from mountain to mountain looking for some way to get some fruit or water so that she could feed him. And that's what we know today in Hajj, the sa'i, the running between Mount Safa and Mount Marwa. That sa'i between the two became an act of worship for all the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, thereafter enacting what Hajar did. And it was said that one of the angels came and showed her where Zamzam came from. So water came from the ground. It was said that the angel used his wing and put caused a hole in the ground and caused water Zamzam to come through the water. And she tried to gather together this water so it doesn't go away. And she uses water to drink herself so that she could feed Ismail. And this was the beginnings of the legacy of Ismail in what we know today as Mecca. And there was a traveling tribe from the tribe of Jurhum, they were from down south of Yemen, who were passing by, and they noticed some birds in the sky, and they know that birds don't circle a certain area unless there's food or water. But they were surprised. How? We know this area. There's no food, there's no water here. But yes, still explore, maybe we'll find something. They found Hajar, they found the water, and they asked kindly, can they stay here and benefit from the water? And she allowed them to stay with the condition that the water belongs to her. And they agreed. And therefore now another nation of people, tribe of people were brought to Hajar in the area, and that's where they remained, and they remained with them in the area furthermore. Inshallah, we'll continue our next episode. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.